Welcome. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of psychological triggers and storytelling. Have you ever wondered why some stories captivate us from the very first sentence while others fall flat? The secret often lies in the subtle psychological cues woven into the narrative. These triggers tap into our emotions, memories, and even our subconscious, making stories feel personal and unforgettable. In this video, we'll explore what psychological triggers are, why they matter, and how storytellers use them to create powerful connections with their audiences. Let's embark on this journey to unlock the secrets behind compelling storytelling. Psychological triggers are specific cues or elements in a story that evoke strong emotional or mental responses from the audience. These triggers can be words, images, situations, or even sounds that tap into our deepest fears, hopes, and desires. For example, a story about overcoming adversity might trigger feelings of inspiration, while a suspenseful plot twist can spark anxiety or excitement. By understanding these triggers, storytellers can craft narratives that resonate on a deeper level, making their stories more engaging and memorable. Let's look at some common types of psychological triggers used in storytelling. Curiosity is one of the strongest psychological triggers in storytelling. When a story presents a mystery or leaves questions unanswered, our brains naturally want to fill in the gaps. This keeps us engaged, eager to find out what happens next. Think about cliffhangers in TV shows or the opening lines of a novel that hint at a secret. These techniques hook the audience, compelling them to keep watching or reading. By leveraging curiosity, storytellers can maintain suspense and ensure their audience stays invested from beginning to end. Emotional resonance is another key trigger. When a story mirrors our own feelings or experiences, it creates a sense of connection. This could be joy, sadness, fear, or hope. For instance, a character's heartbreak might remind us of our own losses while their triumphs inspire us. By tapping into universal emotions, storytellers make their narratives relatable and impactful. This emotional bond encourages audiences to empathize with characters and become more invested in the story's outcome. Surprise is a powerful psychological trigger that can instantly capture attention. Unexpected twists, sudden revelations, or shocking events jolt the audience out of their comfort zone, making the story more memorable. Whether it's a plot twist in a movie or an unforeseen outcome in a novel, surprise keeps the narrative fresh and exciting. Storytellers use this trigger to break predictability and keep audiences guessing, ensuring that their attention never wanes. Characters who feel real and relatable are essential for engaging storytelling. When audiences see themselves in a character's struggles or dreams, they form a deeper connection with the story. This relatability acts as a psychological trigger, making viewers care about what happens next. By giving characters authentic motivations, flaws, and growth, storytellers invite audiences to emotionally invest in their journeys, rooting for their success or feeling their pain. Conflict is at the heart of every compelling story. It creates tension and drives the narrative forward. Whether it's an internal struggle or an external challenge, conflict triggers our desire to see resolution. This psychological trigger keeps audiences engaged as they anticipate how the characters will overcome obstacles. By introducing meaningful conflict, storytellers ensure that their stories remain dynamic and emotionally charged. Suspense is a psychological trigger that keeps audiences on the edge of their seats. By withholding information or building anticipation, storytellers create a sense of urgency and excitement. Suspenseful moments make us anxious to know what happens next, ensuring that we stay invested in the story. Whether it's a ticking clock or a looming threat, suspense heightens emotional involvement and makes the narrative unforgettable. Mystery is closely related to curiosity but adds an extra layer of intrigue. When a story presents puzzles or secrets, it invites the audience to become detectives, piecing together clues alongside the characters. This active engagement is a powerful psychological trigger, making the story more interactive and memorable. Mystery encourages viewers to pay close attention, deepening their connection to the narrative. Familiar elements in a story, such as common themes or settings, can trigger a sense of comfort and nostalgia. Audiences often gravitate toward stories that remind them of their own lives or cherished memories. This psychological trigger makes stories feel safe and relatable, encouraging viewers to relax and immerse themselves in the narrative. By blending the familiar with the new, storytellers create a balanced and engaging experience. Humans have a natural desire for closure. Unresolved stories can leave us feeling uneasy, while a satisfying resolution brings relief and satisfaction. This psychological trigger motivates audiences to follow a story to its end, eager to see how conflicts are resolved and questions answered. Storytellers use this drive for resolution to keep viewers engaged until the very last moment. Empathy is a powerful force in storytelling. When we empathize with a character, we experience their emotions as if they were our own. This psychological trigger deepens our investment in the story, making every triumph and setback feel personal. By crafting characters with relatable struggles and emotions, storytellers encourage audiences to walk in their shoes, forging a lasting emotional connection. Stories that reflect our personal values or challenge our beliefs can trigger strong emotional responses. When a narrative aligns with what we care about, it feels meaningful and impactful. Conversely, stories that question our values can provoke thought and introspection. This psychological trigger makes stories not just entertaining, but transformative, encouraging audiences to reflect on their own lives and choices. Identification occurs when audiences see themselves in a character or situation. This psychological trigger fosters a sense of belonging and validation. When viewers identify with a protagonist's journey, they become more emotionally invested in the outcome. Storytellers use this trigger to create stories that feel personal and inclusive, drawing audiences deeper into the narrative world. Social proof is a psychological trigger rooted in our desire to fit in. When a story shows characters following the crowd or highlights popular opinions, audiences are more likely to accept those ideas. This trigger is often used in marketing and persuasive storytelling, encouraging viewers to adopt certain behaviors or beliefs because others are doing the same. It's a subtle but powerful way to influence audience perception. Authority figures in stories such as experts or leaders can trigger trust and compliance in audiences. When a character is portrayed as knowledgeable or powerful, viewers are more likely to believe and follow their guidance. This psychological trigger is especially effective in educational or motivational storytelling, where credibility is key to persuasion. Scarcity is a trigger that creates a sense of urgency. When something is portrayed as rare or limited, audiences feel compelled to act quickly. In storytelling, this might appear as a ticking clock, a rare opportunity, or a race against time. Scarcity heightens tension and motivates characters and viewers to make decisions before it's too late. Reciprocity is the psychological trigger that makes us want to return favors. In storytelling, when a character helps another, it often leads to acts of kindness in return. This trigger builds trust and goodwill both between characters and with the audience. By showcasing reciprocity, storytellers highlight the importance of relationships and mutual support. Novelty triggers our brain's reward system by presenting something new or unexpected. Stories that introduce fresh ideas, unique settings, or innovative characters capture attention and spark curiosity. Novelty keeps narratives exciting and prevents them from becoming predictable. Storytellers use this trigger to surprise and delight their audiences, ensuring their stories stand out. Vivid imagery is a psychological trigger that brings stories to life. Descriptive language and powerful visuals help audiences imagine the world of the story, making it more immersive. When we can see, hear, or even feel what's happening, the narrative becomes more engaging and memorable. Storytellers use imagery to paint pictures in our minds, deepening our emotional connection to the story. Humor is a universal psychological trigger that breaks tension and creates a sense of camaraderie. Funny moments or witty dialogue make stories more enjoyable and relatable. Laughter also releases endorphins, making audiences feel good and more receptive to the narrative. By incorporating humor, storytellers can lighten heavy topics and build rapport with their audience. Aspirational stories tap into our dreams and ambitions. When a narrative showcases characters achieving great things or overcoming significant odds, it inspires audiences to pursue their own goals. This psychological trigger motivates and uplifts, making stories not just entertaining but empowering. By highlighting aspirations, storytellers encourage viewers to believe in their potential. Fear is a primal psychological trigger that can make stories incredibly gripping. Whether it's fear of loss, danger, or the unknown, this emotion heightens suspense and keeps audiences on edge. Storytellers use fear to create tension and urgency, compelling viewers to stay engaged as they anticipate what might happen next. Hope is a positive psychological trigger that offers comfort and motivation. Stories that highlight hope, even in the face of adversity, inspire audiences to persevere. This trigger reassures viewers that challenges can be overcome and better days are possible. By weaving hope into their narratives, storytellers uplift and encourage their audiences. Need to belong is a fundamental human drive. Stories that emphasize community, friendship, or family tap into this psychological trigger. When audiences see characters forming bonds or finding their place, it resonates deeply. Storytellers use belonging to create warmth and connection, making their narratives more emotionally satisfying. Transformation is a psychological trigger that highlights growth and change. Audiences are drawn to stories where characters evolve, learn, or overcome obstacles. This trigger offers hope and inspiration, showing that change is possible. By focusing on transformation, storytellers create narratives that are both relatable and uplifting. Anticipation is a psychological trigger that builds excitement for what's to come. By hinting at future events or outcomes, storytellers keep audiences looking forward to the next chapter. This sense of anticipation maintains engagement and ensures that viewers remain invested in the narrative journey. Stories that focus on justice and fairness trigger a strong emotional response. Audiences are naturally drawn to narratives where wrongs are righted and fairness prevails. This psychological trigger satisfies our innate sense of morality and encourages us to root for the underdog. By highlighting justice, storytellers create stories that are both compelling and meaningful. Authority figures such as mentors or leaders can serve as powerful psychological triggers in storytelling. Their guidance and wisdom often shape the protagonist's journey, providing direction and support. Audiences look up to these characters, trusting their advice and rooting for their success. By including authority figures, storytellers add depth and credibility to their narratives. Rituals and traditions in stories act as psychological triggers by creating a sense of continuity and belonging. Whether it's a family dinner, a coming-of-age ceremony, or a cultural celebration, rituals ground the narrative in shared experiences. Audiences find comfort in these familiar patterns, which reinforce the themes of connection and identity. Sacrifice is a psychological trigger that evokes admiration and empathy. When characters give up something valuable for the greater good, it highlights their selflessness and courage. Audiences are moved by acts of sacrifice which add emotional weight and depth to the story. This trigger often leads to powerful, memorable moments. Symbolism is a psychological trigger that adds layers of meaning to a story. Objects, colors, or actions can represent deeper themes, inviting audiences to interpret and reflect. Symbolism makes stories richer and more thought-provoking, encouraging viewers to look beyond the surface and find hidden messages. Redemption stories trigger hope and forgiveness. When characters seek to right their wrongs or overcome past mistakes, audiences are inspired by their journey. This psychological trigger highlights the possibility of change and second chances, making stories more uplifting and relatable. Loss is a universal experience that triggers deep emotions. Stories that explore grief, separation, or letting go resonate with audiences on a personal level. This psychological trigger invites empathy and reflection, making narratives more poignant and meaningful. Triumph over adversity is a psychological trigger that fills audiences with joy and inspiration. When characters overcome obstacles and achieve their goals, it reinforces the belief that perseverance pays off. These uplifting moments make stories memorable and encourage viewers to face their own challenges with courage. Irony is a psychological trigger that adds complexity and depth to storytelling. When outcomes differ from expectations, it challenges audiences to think critically and reflect on the narrative's deeper meanings. Irony can be humorous or tragic, but it always engages the mind and emotions. Destiny and fate are psychological triggers that add a sense of inevitability to stories. When characters are guided by destiny, audiences are drawn into the idea that everything happens for a reason. This trigger adds weight and significance to the narrative, making it feel larger than life. Humor during difficult moments acts as a psychological trigger, providing relief and hope. When stories balance darkness with lightheartedness, they become more nuanced and relatable. This contrast helps audiences process tough emotions and keeps them engaged, even when the subject matter is heavy. Repetition is a psychological trigger that reinforces key themes and messages. When certain phrases, motifs, or images recur throughout a story, they become memorable and impactful. Repetition helps audiences internalize the narrative's core ideas, making the story more persuasive and lasting. The setting of a story acts as a psychological trigger by shaping the mood and atmosphere. Whether it's a cozy home, a bustling city, or a mysterious forest, the environment influences how audiences feel and respond. Storytellers use setting to immerse viewers in the narrative world, enhancing emotional engagement. Adventure is a psychological trigger that excites and energizes audiences. Stories filled with exploration, risk, and discovery tap into our desire for novelty and challenge. Adventure narratives inspire us to embrace the unknown and seek out new experiences, making them endlessly appealing. Sound is a subtle but powerful psychological trigger in storytelling. Music, sound effects, and even silence can evoke emotions and set the tone. A suspenseful soundtrack heightens tension while a joyful melody lifts spirits. Storytellers use sound to guide audience reactions and enhance the immersive experience. Perspective is a psychological trigger that shapes how stories are told and received. By presenting events through different viewpoints, storytellers encourage audiences to empathize with various characters and consider multiple sides of a situation. This trigger adds depth and complexity, making narratives more engaging and thought-provoking. Timing is crucial in activating psychological triggers. The pace at which information is revealed, the placement of key moments, and the rhythm of the narrative all affect audience engagement. Well-timed reveals and pauses can heighten suspense, amplify emotions, and make stories more impactful. Conclusion: psychological triggers are the secret ingredients that make stories unforgettable. By understanding and harnessing these triggers, curiosity, emotion, conflict, and more, storytellers can craft narratives that resonate deeply with audiences. Whether you're writing a novel, producing a film, or sharing a personal story, these techniques will help you connect, engage, and inspire. Remember, the best stories are those that move us, challenge us, and stay with us long after they end. Thank you for joining this exploration of psychological triggers in storytelling.